focusing on talent recruitment and development in the age of AI. With me in studio or in the virtual room, we have a number of industry-leading experts whose day-in, day-out job it is to focus on talent and recruitment, and who's impacted by artificial intelligence. And maybe impact is not even the word. Maybe it is the marriage of artificial intelligence into our day-to-day life. And that's what the session is predominantly all about. So again, with talent and development in the age of AI and jobs rapidly, or the job market rapidly evolving, is artificial intelligence reshaping the way that we attract, assess, and develop talent? AI-driven tools are streamlining recruitment processes, enhancing candidate experiences, and enabling companies to make more data-driven hiring decisions. At the same time, advancement raises important questions about bias, ethics, and the human touch in talent management. And we'll be touching on some of those in today's session. As we navigate this transformation, organizations must rethink not only how they hire, but also how they nurture and upskill employees in an AI-driven world. How can AI help us create more inclusive, equitable hiring processes? What skills will be most valuable in an AI-powered economy or future? How do we strike the balance between automation, human intuition, and talent development? So without too much further ado, we have the experts in the industry that will talk to us about all of these critical issues that I've just kind of raised. And I'd love to take the opportunity now to introduce the panel to you of industry-leading experts, all from the financial sector. So starting with Sapati Tsetsotsho, Head of Human Capital for Momentum Group. Sapati oversees human resource strategy across Africa and Asia for Momentum, with a background in strategic consulting at Deloitte and Accenture. And she specializes in talent development, change management, and mergers and acquisitions. Then we have Ilse Johnston, leading talent acquisition specialist and head at Standard Bank Private and Investment Banking Division. Ilse brings nearly 2 decades of experience in recruitment strategy across multiple industries and continents. She's passionate about optimizing business processes and leveraging AI for talent attraction. Next on, we have Busi Segonetso. She's the senior human partner at APSA. Busi is an industrial psychologist with expertise in talent management, leadership development, business transformation across Africa and the Middle East. She thrives in understanding the human intersection of human behavior and workforce or workplace success. Next on, we have Chantal Morton. Chantal is a group human resources leader at Nedbank. Chantal is a specialist in workforce strategy, organizational design, job architecture, passionate about integrating people, processes, and technology to drive business success in the future of the workplace. Then the one male on panel with myself, Samir Adams from Coronation. Samir is head of development at Coronation Fund Managers. He drives digital transformation and innovation, a thought leader in AI and its role in cybersecurity. He excels in managing technology portfolios and leading teams to create cutting-edge solutions. So, Samir, we're looking forward to hearing from you and some of your thoughts. And then we move on to Nora Senoha, who's the executive head of human capital at Santam. Nora has over 20 years of experience in financial services, specializing in leadership development and coaching. She's dedicated in unlocking human potential and mentoring the next generation of leaders. So welcome, Nora. And we then step on to Sarisha Naidu, who is the head of HR for Citibank's South and East Africa regions. Sarisha has been shaping talent strategies at Citibank since 2012, and she has a deep expertise in human capital development. She's passionate about driving people-centric business growth. Before we now move on to Masinde, I don't see Masinde on the call. Okay, so Next on, we have Nicola Tega. Nicola is joining us from Investec. She's the Group Head of Employee Experience. Nicola is shaping workplace culture and talent engagement at a global level with deep expertise in human resources and leadership. She's been instrumental in driving Investec's high performance and inclusive work culture. So welcome, lovely panelists. I'll very quickly go around and just give you an opportunity to say hi to the audience. Anything I missed out that you'd like to throw in as well, you're welcome to throw it onto the table right now. And then we'll jump into the panel session for this afternoon. So yeah, after the panel, very quickly to add in if you would like to.
Just thank you for having us, and a privilege to be here with esteemed colleagues across the industry. So thank you.
Yep, same on my side. Thank you, Nishin. Very excited to be here and very excited to be on the same panel with like Nicola said, esteemed colleagues.
Fantastic. Okay.
Cool. I think this is a very necessary conversation, especially amongst our panelists here today. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Busi. And I think that's a very important point. It's a critical conversation to have because I think there's a lot of people that are struggling with some of the challenges that we all face. Some of us have found ways around the challenges. And I think that's what the session is really all about. It's about really looking at different ways that each of us can actually navigate some of the challenges that we have, or even just find new opportunities to innovate in our business, just based on some of the things that people are talking about. So let's jump into the session without too much further ado. And let's start talking about artificial intelligence, right? How is it shaping the demand for talent in financial services? And what skills are emerging in organizations that you need to now prioritize because of AI? So I'll pick on a couple of people. And again, if you want to throw in a comment, please throw your hand up and I'll open the floor for you. But let's start with you, Busi, because I see you right at the center of my screen.
How did I know that you would start with me? So let's just think quickly. I think what AI has done is that it has forced financial services, firstly, to pause and reflect, right? Not just on the skills that we need to build, but of the pace that we need to be building these skills, right? In order to adequately respond to the changing global landscape around us. By reshaping things like automating of tasks, enhancing data-driven decision-making, and predictive analysis, AI is creating a demand for a hybrid skill set, in my view. And some of the things that I would think about is, yes, the technical proficiency to build one and to conversate with the AI platforms, but you also require the contextual intelligence to ensure that whatever AI intervention is fit for purpose. But lastly, we cannot just go with AI. There's still a demand for building human skills, such as adaptability and problem solving. So the reshaping that I'm seeing in my view is that organizations must prioritize continuous learning and agility to keep up with the pace of the evolving roles and the workplace.
Oh, fantastic, Busi. So very insightful. Hybrid skills to build, human skills as well. So we mustn't forget that as much as we're focusing on AI, the human skills to build. But interestingly enough, the pace to build the skills is something of interest and probably something that we are struggling with. We don't have the right skilling in the environment, which is challenging us to build the skills as quickly as we need them. So I'm sure that's going to come up a lot more in the conversation. So I've seen Chantal. We'll go to Chantal, Ilse, Sarisha, and then we'll jump to Samir for your comments. So Chantal, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nishin. So I think the increasing focus on digitization, AI, Gen AI, is reshaping the demand for talent in financial services, right? And that's been the wonderful thing about working in financial services is it's always at the forefront of a lot of these new digital initiatives. But in our view, it is driving the need for robust strategic workforce planning so that you can understand the demand and supply in line with your strategic business objectives when it comes to AI and Gen AI and digitization broadly. So for us, yeah, a big focus is on that. And so we're looking at implementing tools that are strategic workforce planning tools that are helping us to drive better and more accurate insights around the demand and supply of skills, because we've seen, right, I think cloud engineering is a key skill in the AI set of tools, and over the last couple of years there's been something like 1,071% increase in the demand for those skills in the market. Data science, there's been 30-odd%, data engineering over 500%. So we're really seeing that these skills are in demand globally. And so we are competing with not only financial services industries for these same skills. I think from an emerging skills perspective, we see a substantial increase in the demand for skills and technical skills in AI, applied AI, specifically machine learning, information processing, robotics and automation, data science, cybersecurity, etc. And, fast growing roles in this space, like I mentioned. But we also do know that financial services is not only about those roles, right? So I fully agree that we need our strategic workforce planning insights to decide how do we buy talent, build talent, to inform our hiring and development decisions. But a lot of our workforce also focus on skills around sales and customer service and product development. And so I think basic AI literacy, prompt engineering skills, the ethical use of AI and Gen AI to unlock potential, enhance productivity, and foster innovation is going to be critical also in those non-technical roles in financial services.
Oh, fantastic. I think the one thing that I picked up there that was, I think, relevant to everyone as well, apart from everything that you've said, right, is the skills that you are building. You're not just competing in the industry, you're also competing outside of the industry, right? Because cloud computing doesn't have to really be just in financial services. The application can go across industries. So you're actually competing for skills across multiple different sectors, and you don't have too many of those skills in the industry. So building it to the point that Lucy made earlier, the rapid pace to try and build those skills is the challenge that I think we're all struggling with. No, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Chantal. Over to you, Ilse.
Thank you, Nashane. I'm actually at the LinkedIn conference today, and the topic is AI, so it's top of mind for everybody, I suppose. And what they said in the beginning of the morning was that 70% of skills used in most jobs will change by 2030 as AI continues to develop. So that's quite interesting. But what I like to think about is what is within our control, and what are the relevant skills, not only to financial services, but really to the market that individuals can foster. And these are really those people skills. And Chantal spoke about customer service, and obviously that's really important to us in the industry. But what remains, what continues to remain important are things such as curiosity, emotional intelligence. Communication has always been something that we struggle with when we interview people or within the organization that we want to develop. Teamwork, empathy, persuasion, adaptability. I think, we've always been interviewing for these sorts of soft skills and struggling. And I think as AI becomes more relevant and we start to shift our focus to these technical requirements, we mustn't forget that at least 50% of the requirements will continue to remain these soft skills. And if individuals can really foster and grow and develop themselves in these areas on a personal basis, and also with the assistance of the organizations, it will give them a competitive advantage in the future.
Thank you for that, Ilse. So I think you're throwing out a couple of stats here. 70% change in jobs or skills by 2030. And then we're hearing about 50% of that will still remain soft skills. So that's kind of interesting because there was a stat that was thrown out by Chantal. There was a 500% increase, I think, in cloud and data skills that are required, or demand for those skills. So it's interesting to see how industries are shifting. And again, going back to the point, we're not necessarily keeping to the pace of all of these things. But there is kind of a silver lining in the cloud, from what I'm hearing, that there will still always be a demand for human skills in the process. It's just shifting from the technical more towards the softer side of things. Creativity, innovation, communication skills, leading people. Those are some of the things that then kind of come to mind. I think we were going to jump to Samir. I've seen Chantal put her hand up, and Nora went before Chantal. So Samir, and then we'll jump to Nora, and then to Chantal. Unless Chantal, you have a point to Ilse's.
Yes, thank you, Nishin. I just wanted to emphasize what Ilse was saying, right? Those behavioral, the critical skills, the human-centered skills is what it's called in the literature, I think remains at the essence, because AI at this point cannot be as creative as humans do. It cannot solve. It's a tool to help us to become more productive, more efficient, similar to how when calculators were introduced or Excel was introduced to accounting, right? It was to make them more effective and efficient. And for me, AI is doing the same. And it's a tool we leverage to do that. It doesn't take away from our ability to innovate as humans, the ability to ask the right questions from your AI assistants or the AI tools that you use. So fundamentally, yes, it's about building the technical capabilities and skills to help you, stay relevant in the market. But beyond that, those core human skills that Ilse alluded to and mentioned remain critical, even if not more critical than the technical components.
No, fantastic for that, Chantal. So thank you, because so I actually just picked up an article the other day from Futurism, and they were talking, so we know the point of singularity is kind of predicted to be at about 2045, and that's where there's no definition between human and artificial intelligence, right? But with DeepSeek having come in, they're starting to do a reanalysis of that prediction. And some of the new predictions coming in is that by 2030, we might get to that point of singularity. So that's even sooner than what was previously predicted. But that's just an interesting point to throw on the table. Let's head off to Samir before we go to Nora.
Well, thanks very much. I'm not sure I'm on the card of sentient AI yet, but we'll keep watching that. I think the important thing for us around AI is there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of different types of tools out there. And the important thing for us is how, as an organization, you sort of figure out which ones are right for you, right? And then train and create that AI literacy amongst the employees that you have. And I think that's a critical thing as an organization, right? From an AI strategy perspective, is to understand what is your strategy around building AI literacy internally? And then during the process, from a talent acquisition, talent management perspective, I echo the sentiment of my colleagues to say that, you're competing with everyone. And I think that's quite important, is to understand this is how you use it, this is how you teach people to use it. And then when you bring new skills in, is to have the right programs in place to be able to upskill them to use these AI tools, because it is just that, it's a tool, it's a productivity tool like it is, like there are any other tools, right? And it affects more than just the financial services sector. There are various ways in which you can use these tools, right? For an asset manager, whether it's on the technology side or the asset management side, etc. But the idea is to build up that AI literacy. And I think that's where a key focus should be.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. While you were talking, I think one of the things that kind of jumped to me is, again, you're competing with everyone, but when it comes to development, and we jump into a development question later on, but something for the panel to think about is that debate between qualification-based development versus skills-based development, which is going to be the faster route to get us to the competencies that we want to build. And with the world already starting to shift to skills-based development, is South Africa on pace with that or not, right? So keep that at the back of your mind when we get to the development question. Nora, let's open the floor to you.
Maybe just before you jump off, it's just
okay.
On the point of that is, often in talent acquisition, you look for problem-solving skills, or at least that's how it's brought across, right? It's not just about what your resume looks like and what you've done and how you do it. It's that problem-solving ability that you look for. And there's a lot of online chat about whether using AI in that space is good or not. You know what I mean? So there's sort of a philosophical view of it in terms of, is it good if someone is really good at using AI to solve their problems? So if it can augment you well, then great, but is that good or is it bad? So maybe something we can touch on later as well.
And I think we'll probably touch on that a little bit more because there's a bit of the ethics that you think about that sits behind that, but is it an enablement tool? or is it a disenablement tool because now people are not thinking for themselves and they're relying on the artificial intelligence, or is there a better way to marry the two together? So yeah, let's see if we get to that later on. Nora.
Thanks, Nishan. I mean, I agree with my colleagues with regards to all the skills that they refer to. So within the Santam space, I think what for us has been quite important is how do we build the capability from a leadership perspective? Because it's going to be quite critical that our leaders are the ones that are actually driving, these skills and enhancing and identification of these skills that are going to be needed in the future. So we also talk about a refresh strategy for 2030. So for us, in terms of our North Star, we're also building towards 2030. We're already in the process of identifying what are the skills that we believe will set us apart from our competitors in 2030. But what is important, especially this year, is to say it can't be a human capital process or a human capital challenge to solve. And we've realized the importance of then identifying skills that are going to be required from a leadership perspective to say, as a leader, how do you ensure that you understand the skills that are required in your business? A colleague on the course spoke about, workforce planning. Are we building the capability from a leadership perspective for our leaders to be able to workforce plan, for them to be able to adapt? Because the challenge that is going to be faced by leaders is that they themselves in their own role has to then deal with the impact of AI, but they also need to lead the change. They need to be able to look around the corner to say, what is coming around the corner that's going to impact on my business? Emotional intelligence, I think it's going to be something that continues to be a need from a leadership development perspective. I mean, we've seen it with post-COVID, how that the softer skills or behavioral skills that we've spoken about, that they all of a sudden, from a leadership perspective, I think they've started to overshadow the technical skills, because you can train for the technical skills. And I think for me, we must never underestimate the need for just building that leadership capability and them understanding how they can get the most out of AI. Because for me, I always say it's not about what AI can do for you, but what is it that you can actually use AI to enhance and to bring the efficiencies that you need in your business as well. Thanks, Nishan.
Fantastic, Nora. And I think that last point is talking to what Samir was kind of saying earlier on, and what I was kind of saying is how do you use it as an enablement tool rather than creating more disenablement in the environment. Sapati, let's jump over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really wanted to touch on something that I think Samir had said, particularly on the aspect of literacy. For us, literacy really is almost the determining factor of whether or not AI will work or not. So I come from the Africa space where often you would introduce a particular tool, and even if your external talent, for example, is not literate in certain tools as well, whatever tools that you have set out there to help with streamlining of recruitment, as an example, those typically can fail because the external talent out there is not exposed to those tools. So that literacy is not only for your internal people, but also for your external talent as well. And that's something that we constantly as a business need to make sure that we are harping on and sharpening. Thanks, Nishan.
Fantastic, Sapati. So I hear you talking about tools, and it kind of leads us into the next kind of question I want to throw to the panel, right? When we're talking about AI-driven hiring tools, right? Is it improving the process for you? Is it complicating the process? Is it doing both? So I just want to get a sense. So firstly, are you using AI tools in the recruitment process? And how exactly are you using it? And does it feel like it's complicating the process, or is it simplifying the process for you? Nicola, I see your hand is up, so let's jump to you.
Thanks. So yes, we're dabbling with it, like most organizations I'm sure are, and really trying to test what's going to work for us or not. I think the caution here is, like any of the HR processes, but recruitment obviously being one of the more important ones, it's a very seductive thing to think that AI is going to come in and create a whole lot of capacity or efficiency, which it can. But the complexity here is to hold the balance around what do you need to protect in your own EVP, in your own organization that really is your secret sauce in terms of what you deliver to clients, etc., in introducing AI tools. What you don't want to disrupt is things like potentially your culture or potentially the business strategy or your purpose. And the seduction of introducing tools could mean that you put some of those things at risk. So I'll give you a very basic example, but we're a very human-centric organization, and one of the things we test for a lot in the recruitment process is an ability to integrate into our culture through a relational domain. Now, if we embedded a tool that helped us do the full selection of bringing someone into the organization, we would miss a lot in terms of the connection to the organization's culture. And so I think in the recruitment process, very specifically, it's around choosing the right tools that can take over aspects where potentially it does create capacity for your recruitment consultants or your business partners or even your leaders in terms of the recruitment process without minimizing or undermining or disrupting something exceptionally important to you, like, for example, culture. So where we've introduced in terms of some of the long listing in terms of screening of profiles, the more objective aspects in terms of maybe skill capability or identifying certain aspects like that. Or, for example, being more robust in summarizing conversations from one interview to the next. There are tools that can do those types of things that would take time from your own human capital in terms of actually applying themselves in other aspects, like building relationship, really deepening the process in terms of identifying if a person can integrate and work well in your organization. So I think all I wanted to emphasize was that view of we have to be very selective and cautious because it is seductive just to bring in a whole lot of tools versus what potentially would you lose in your own process that's important to your organization very specifically.
No, fantastic. Yes, great. You guys are jumping into it, but then the caution around managing it so that it helps with efficiency and capacity building and not hamper things like EVP and culture. No, lovely stuff. Thank you so much for that, Nicola. I'll jump to Busi, then Ilsa, and Sapati. Actually, I think it was Sarisha, then Sapati.
Okay, I think, Nishin, to respond to this question, I want to borrow a page from, the industrial psychology practice. And what we talk about is the duality that needs to exist between the rise of AI and rehumanizing the workplace, right? And I think just to echo Nicola's sentiment, it's not the one or the other, but it's how do you come to a meeting of the minds between AI and the human touch in the workplace. So if you think about the places where AI can be beneficial, it's things like your pre-screening, it's having chatbots available after hours, just to do a quick Q&A with your candidates. I think that just help from a human capital perspective, improving efficiency and reducing some of our hiring times. But I think where the seduction trap is, just borrow from Nicola's words, is the over-reliance on the technology and taking away that human element. And we know that from a talent is a relationship element, right? So you can't just bring it to a static element such as technology. There's still that relationship that needs to come in. So my view is quite simple on this. It is around the duality of the two, and to mitigate the risk of going too far in one direction, is we need to remember that AI should not replace human decision-making and hiring, but it's there to augment and make our processes more efficient and effective.
Oh, fantastic. I love it, Busi. Talent is about relationships because that's how you find the right individuals for the right culture fit in your organization, which artificial intelligence cannot really measure through an AI process. So fantastic. Yeah, thank you. We said we were going to jump on to, I think it was Ilsa, and then Sarisha, and then Spati.
Thanks. Just to add, I think a lot of important points have been made. I think one of the other things that AI gives us, and most of the recruitment systems that are in play currently do have AI in them. We saw advancements in LinkedIn AI for recruitment and sourcing that is similar and more advanced to ChatGPT. It's absolutely amazing. So it really is creating efficiency, streamlining our processes. It's giving us access to bigger pools of candidates, which is really exciting. I think one of the things that wasn't mentioned is reducing bias in terms of standardization of process, and also things such as initial screening of candidate CVs. So that is a benefit from an AI point of view. Echoing the other thoughts, human in the loop oversight is critical. It should support, as we've said, not replace human decision making. The human oversight is still so important as we continue to have data put into the system that's not necessarily great. So for example, some people are better at writing a CV and submitting it, which the AI then picks up the key skills, then other candidates that might be suitable. So TA specialists, talent acquisition specialists still really need to review the AI generated recommendations and make sure that the tools are serving us and enhancing our judgment around who is best suited. And as Nicholas said, one cannot assess culture through a CV. So it doesn't take away from that human element that needs to come in. And then ultimately, I like to think of us as you mentioned, relationship builders, relationship managers. When you're having a conversation with a candidate about what's really important to them and what is it that they really want, and at the end of the day, you need to entice them to come to your organization. There's no AI tool that can do that at this point in time. So I think those are some of the really important things to consider as well.
Thank you so much, Ilse. So as you were talking, it kind of just reminded me of the iPhone advert that's currently on TV. And there's this gentleman sitting on his chair and he's like cruising around and he types this unprofessional email, and Apple AI converts it into a professional note back to his line leader. And his boss looks a little bit puzzled, but that's kind of to the point that what is actually sitting behind it, once it goes through something that's AI generated, you actually lose the essence of the person that is actually sending that message. And that's what kind of talks to the misalignment in culture, individual, that sort of thing, which you can't really measure, right? So fantastic. Thank you for that. Sarisha, and then it'll be over to Supati.
Thanks, Nishan. I think my panelists have put it perfectly, and I think ultimately we have come, I think baseline is that the fact that we need the softer skills and we need the technical skills. But what I would just like to add on to that as well is we have to embed the ethics, the security, and the trustworthy AI principles, right? We need to feed that in. And at the end of the day, although we may use AI, we need to be able to explain our outcomes and our decisions that we make, whether in hiring decisions or whatever business decisions we need to consider. It's about explaining that. I mean, ultimately, AI manages the repetitive tasks and we need to feed into the data. But at the same time, we need that soft skill or that human skill to audit our inputs that we make into our AI systems. And that's quite key. That's quite key in terms of us making the best hiring decisions for our organizations.
No, fantastic, Sarisha. So again, I think you're kind of highlighting it quite nicely and putting quite succinctly. AI generates a lot of the data that we're looking for, but we still need that human skill to audit or make the decisions that sit behind that. So again, I think highlighting and emphasizing the fact that humans still have a deep role to play in whatever process that AI would be also part of. We are jumping to Supati, and I see Nora's gone with a hand up as well as Samir. So Supati, Nora, and then Samir. And Nicola after that. There we go.
Thank you, Nishan. I think what I actually wanted to say has sort of been covered by some of the colleagues, is really around decision making. And I think maybe I can bring it more by way of example, right, where AI will kind of say, we do not recommend this particular individual for this reason. And there's the danger then of kind of saying, no, we're completely rejecting this because the tool has said this. But actually, there's other sets of information that we've had. If we have had a proper interview and we sat with that person, if we have done other things as well throughout the process, that gives us a whole lot of information then to actually be able to assess with everything in hand, with what the AI information is giving us, what the interaction that we would have had with that particular individual is giving us as well. And that's what we then would use to make decisions. So it needs to be a very holistic way of making decisions. And this is really just a tool to kind of help speed things up a little bit here.
No, fantastic. Thanks, Sapati. You actually reminded me of something else, which is garbage in, garbage out. So if you look at some of these tools, like I know there was a tool that I used to use in the past, it was called Workplace. And what it would do is it'll go and search for CVs based on profiles that we put out for looking for particular skills and talent. And it'll go off onto LinkedIn and it'll grab aligned CVs. But if somebody hasn't completed their profile correctly, it won't bring that data through, but they may actually be the right candidate for the job. So again, that human aspect of being part of the process is also still kind of critical. So thank you, Sapati. Let's go to Nora.
Thanks, Nishan. I always like to challenge my thinking and ask myself whether we're being disruptive enough in our thinking. And I think a thought came in as I was listening to my colleagues in terms of, are we thinking long-term enough? Like, are we thinking beyond? Because, you know, I understand that the narrative, and I truly do agree with my colleagues that you need the balance, right, between AI and human behavior, because you need to bring in that element of just being able to think and make the decision. And I guess the challenge to us is, are we being disruptive? Are we currently have a generation of digital natives, right? We've got kids that are growing up with technology. So they're growing up in AI. And I guess for me, we need to think about a world many years from now. I don't know how far that off is, of a world that you are going to have intelligent AI, right? AI that can, you know, be built in such a way that it can make some of these decisions. It can, you know, you can build in, you know, I guess, making sure that from an ethics perspective that, you know, everything that we worry about right now, that we believe that the human touch is going to bring into that there's potentially a world out there, you know, far into the future, that the AI will be able to bring that. And I guess the question then would be, what do you still get from human behavior? So when you think about recruitment, I mean, I agree with my colleagues. We use it within Santam, same thing. You know, it saves time, because from a screening perspective, you know, gone are the days that you know, my recruitment team will sit and have to screen and do the long list and the short list, because you can do that easily with AI. So it saves time in terms of then focusing on the efficiency and the turnaround time of our recruitment. But, you know, I do wonder whether, you know, is there going to be a time where actually AI can do so much more? And then the question then becomes, actually, what is the skills that is still going to be required for us to be relevant as human practitioners in this space? I don't have the answers. I think it's just a thought that came in to say, in us thinking, I think we need to think beyond 2030. We need to think about this generation that's coming through, to say it is a generation that relies heavily on artificial intelligence, because they you know, they grew up with digital. And we see it slightly now with the new generation. So when you look at the graduates that are coming in, they struggle a lot if in a process there's any manual intervention. Because with them, the only time that you must bring them into a process is when the brain needs to be activated, not because there's a spreadsheet that they need to figure out, or when they, and I think for me, it's really about that, to say, you know, how are we making sure that we are thinking beyond 2030? Do we really know what is coming around the corner? Or are we going to be caught? You know, we used to talk about the fourth industrial revolution as something that's going to happen, you know, in years to come, until COVID hit. And all of a sudden, we needed to accelerate that. And I just think, you know, for me and my colleagues, that we just need to think about the possibility of what AI actually can bring into the financial services industry.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nora. So I was actually having yesterday a discussion with an industry leader, so a group head of learning, and we were chatting about exactly this, the debate between are we focused on the current or near future versus long-term future, and where do we actually start building the skills for that? But the bigger question that came out was the fact that there's a budget. And the budget is limited when we come to training and development. And if we have that limited budget, are we focusing on the immediate skills we need to build? How much of that budget is then split between the medium term and then the longer term? So that's also an interesting question to kind of throw into the mix, Nora, in that debate. Where do we focus? How much of time and effort do we place on that focus? And then how much of budget do we place on that focus as well? I see Nora. Yeah, go for it.
Just one more thing. So with the budget thing, because it's my constant, my team knows, budget. But I always say to my team, when you are trying to solve a challenge or a problem, think outside of budget constraints. So imagine that you've got an unlimited budget, because that's how you open yourself up to the possibility of what that solution can be. And once you've then thought about it outside of the budget, I always say to my team, imagine you've got a bottomless pit of money, come up with a solution. And once you've done that, then you rein it in based on the budget that you have now. But already you've got what, ideal looks like and what you can. And then when you go into the business in terms of your planning, then you can say to the business, this is what the Rolls Royce of it looks like, but this is going to require X amount. We've got Y amount, and therefore this is what we are proposing. But you never start your solutioning from the budget that you have, because already you are limiting your thinking. Thank you.
Fantastic, Nora. That's one of the design thinking principles, right? Your funnel thinking, you go broad at the top, and then you narrow it down to what would be a potential solution. And then you actually broaden it out again. Once you've hit your solution point, you then start thinking bigger again. So lovely. Thank you for that, Nora. So we were going to Samir next, then Nicola.
Thanks. Yeah. So the point, just want to echo as well, is around the human oversight. I think that it's quite critical, because in our process, for instance, what we see in our industry is people are transitioning between roles, and it's very difficult for AI to pick up those particular type of skills that you're going to need. So if it's CV screening, yes, there's efficiencies to that type of thing, but all of a sudden I have someone that has a quants background that doesn't specifically have Python skills or R skills or something like that, that wants to transition into a data engineering role, and they're bright, they're intelligent, they have problem-solving skills, they'll be filtered out, where actually they might be an ideal candidate with domain expertise that they bring in. So I think that's why, for me, removing that bias and having a human oversight, that's quite critical in that process. And then I know a lot of the discussion is around recruitment and sort of the acquisition side and how you be more efficient there. What we find is we're looking at it and just dabbling in terms of being proactive on the retention side of things, and looking at the data in terms of the people that you have, what skills they have, how long they're there for, what's keeping them here, having those type of interviews, stay interviews, and then tying that back to potential exit interviews to see, just using AI for the data to be able to draw insights out of that and understand what your workforce looks like, what your workforce potentially should look like in the future, and then what you've lost along the way.
Oh, fantastic, Samir. So I think you're touching on what we're going to jump into next, a lot of the bias that's in the process. So guess what? You're going to be the first one that responds when I jump onto that. We'll dig a little bit deeper into what you've just said. Thank you. Nicola, let's jump over to you.
I'll just give a closing comment on this one then around talent acquisition, but we've spoken from the organizational perspective a lot in terms of us making decision about the individuals that we're meeting or the candidates in our process. But there is an individual who's also selecting our organization. And if they are deciding on things far broader, obviously than REM and what the role requires, etc., they should be wanting to choose an organization in which they can thrive from a context and environment perspective, etc., too. And it's very difficult to replicate an understanding of culture without giving them a sense in terms of observation. So I often say to people, it's an unconscious observation. They're observing the culture in your process the entire time. The way we speak to each other, how fast we walk, the way that we engage. Can they get a sense of hierarchy in the room or not? Can they understand who the leader is or not? All of those unconscious observations for the human being to be able to say, yes, I can connect with this organization in its context and I can truly belong in order to perform, I think will be very difficult, and it may be one of Nora's much longer term capabilities that AI would deliver us, but important to remember the impact for them as an individual to selecting the organization.
Oh, fantastic. And thank you for that. I think you bring us back to a point of reality, that we always look at it from the organizational perspective, because that's where we are currently. But there is also the individual coming in, and what is their perspective? What are they looking for? And how can we be the point, or how can we advertise ourselves in a way that kind of demonstrates that this is where they actually want to be? So how do we demonstrate that culture, being, wholeness, values, vision of the organization, and is it realistic enough for them to be able to be attracted to that? Thank you very much for that, Nicola. Fantastic. So let's transition quite nicely into that bias question I was kind of referring to, right? So AI has been criticized on a number of occasions for reinforcing bias in recruitment, right? So it tends to focus on the particular skills that you've now inputted into the system. It starts learning from the types of people that have been recruited into a particular role, race, profile, gender, all of those things kind of start becoming a bias into the process in itself, right? Also, what I've also found as bias is recruitment from a particular institution. So whether it is a competitor of yours, or maybe it's from university. So if you're looking at a grad program, if we're constantly recruiting from a particular university, the system learns that, because that's what artificial intelligence is all about. It looks at our behaviors, and then it learns from our behaviors. Now, what steps in your organization are you taking to ensure fairness and diversity in your recruitment processes?
You said you'll get us first. Yeah. Okay. So interestingly, not so much. We don't use AI that often in our process from a talent acquisition perspective. There is sort of like the screening of the document stuff, but we have a lot of human oversight, and we still look at every candidate, right? But I think the point that you were making around those unintended exclusions from a bias perspective, where these are the candidates that you hired before, and the AI tools use that to determine what candidates are right for the recruitment or taking, like shortlisting, etc. I think it's important to have oversight over that, to understand how you tweak that, and that comes back to the point about AI literacy, right? Because the person sitting behind the screen that is supposed to understand who these candidates are needs to be able to understand that there is potential bias in these tools, and how do they tweak and configure it so that it doesn't have this bias. So I think that's quite important in this process.
No, fantastic. So that continuous oversight is what will help us to kind of short circuit the artificial intelligence tool learning the wrong traits. No, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Samir.
Like if you don't, sorry, Nish, if you don't know how to prove that there is bias, or to reconfigure it or retrain the model so that you remove that bias, then you're always going to have a bias system.
No, fantastic. So the control mechanism needs to be built into it. Lovely. Thank you. Ilse, let's jump to you.
Great. I think just on the other side of what Samira said, and to repeat what you said earlier, is really it's the garbage in, garbage out concept. But what we can focus on is equitable matrix and evaluation criteria based on skills. And you also asked that question in the beginning. So I think moving to very much a skills-based process to determine who are the top suitable candidates is where a lot of these systems are moving. And what I really love about AI is we've been spending, I think, for me, it's probably been the last 12 years training an unconscious bias, and that is completely removed in the initial screening process through AI, which is really wonderful. But I think what's important in the skills-based selection is that we really accurately predict, the most suitable candidates for a role through fair, justifiable matrix specific to the job. So this is again where the human interaction comes in, is knowing exactly what is needed for the specific role based on skill. Again, like Nicola said, it does not cover the cultural component, but in that initial process, to be able to do that skills match and eliminate unconscious bias is actually a positive.
Fantastic, also. Again, while you were talking, it reminded me of a little tool that I kind of saw in Singapore. that was earlier this year. So what was interesting was this tool was being used in the recruitment process to identify candidates and their leadership thinking ability. And what was interesting about this was that it placed them in a scenario where they're on a spaceship and the spaceship was about to explode and they needed to find where the bomb was and try and defuse the bomb on the spaceship. And they had a team with them, and all of the team members are all artificial intelligence characters in this game, and they had to lead, and they looked at their style of leadership, their decision-making ability, but also kind of the culture that they were portraying in that team leadership role. So some of those elements were slowly starting to come out in that process, which they were using in part in the recruitment process in itself. It wasn't a definitive tool that they were using, but something to give the leadership that sat behind the tool the decision-making opportunity to decide if the individual was suitable or not. So yeah, just kind of interesting. I thought I'd throw that in there. Did I see somebody else's hand going up? Samir, let's go back to you.
So it's quite an interesting point, right? Because we're looking at it from a point of view of us sitting in front of a candidate, but it works the other way as well, right? So if the candidate has tools to be able to pick up, or analyze using the video proctoring or whatever to determine how you are bringing yourself across and analyze your ability or your leadership qualities or your sentiment during the interview process as well, then I think even that is something that we should be looking at.
Fantastic. Thanks for Samir. What also then kind of begs the question is when candidates go through this process, do they get the feedback to help them with their development going forward? So if they're not successful, they're not the right fit and alignment, through this AI process or AI-dominated process, where does some of that input and feedback come through from to give that feedback to the candidate for their development? So keep that one at the back of mind. We maybe have an opportunity to tap into that later. Ilse, let's go back to you.
Maybe Ilse's waiting for me to go first.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's okay. Naren, let's just think about human behavior first before we start talking about technological behavior. As humans ourselves, whether we like to admit it or not, we've got inherent unconscious bias, right? And if you work on that as your starting point around these very humans are the people that are building these machines, it goes therefore without saying that these machines are also going to have an element of bias. So I think for me, it starts even in the building phase of your AI platforms around how do you use diverse data sets? Because if it's just Busi who's training this AI algorithm or model, it's going to learn to think like me. So how do we then incorporate more diverse data sets in the building and the inception phase? But also it goes beyond that. Once you have built and implemented your AI technology tools or whatever you want to refer to it as, I think this is where the power of community comes in, especially within a corporate environment. You should be working with your audit department. How do you get your internal audit teams to regularly audit the AI for bias, right? You've got ethics boards, especially within financial services. How are we leveraging that community to make sure that there's an ethical element to our AI tools? So I guess, we think about building this thing and once built, forever implemented, but there's an actual refining process that needs to take place. To Samir's point, how do you retrain it? Well, when you are aware that there is bias, how do you retrain it? How do you feed it different and diverse data sets? The human oversight point we've all alluded to. But I think the last one for me is transparency. How do we create transparency in the AI decision-making processes so that it can be checked and challenged and that we build trust through doing that?
Oh, Kosi, such a fantastic point, right? Start with the human first, right? Because we inform the system, that's where it learns from. And very interesting that you brought up the audit concept, because I was actually part of the audit function in APSA, and what we were actually looking at was we knew artificial intelligence was coming in to the audit function and it was going to take over the audit function. All you really needed after that was the CIA to kind of just sign off the audit report, right? But then we started looking at the skills of the auditors and what we do with that, which was actually then very interesting because you've got these auditors in the process, they've built and developed those skills. And one of the pieces of thinking that we had at the time was how we could transition it to frontline rather than being third line of support. In other words, how could these auditors start informing the designs of the systems, the tools, the processes right up front, because they already had the thinking and understanding of the things to look for on the back end of the system. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to the fore. I saw Sarisha, and I think I did see Nicola's hand up, but let's go to Sarisha.
Thanks, Nishan. I think, point that my colleagues are making as well. I think what's important for us to understand is that we need to embrace AI. We need to use AI to our advantage, and we need to understand what are the future skill sets we would require in our organization. It is changing our landscape. It's changing our everyday lives. It's changing society, and it's changing the way we work. And I think what's quite key is that we need to use AI to our advantage. And yes, in certain cases, there might be certain repetitive tasks that AI will be taking on, as I've mentioned previously, but at the same time, it's creating new opportunities for us. And I think as leaders, we need to be resilient and committed in terms of ensuring that we create an environment, and it's a change management process. All our employees are going to go through a change in terms of the way the landscape looks. And as a result of that, I think it's very important that we are resilient during this time, and we need to embrace AI for our advantage in our financial institutions as well.
Fantastic, thank you. So it's really about the embracing of that, and it kind of talks to what I was going to jump onto next. But I think we've kind of spoken a lot about it, trying to find that balance between artificial intelligence and the human decision making process, and bringing the two together. And I think it's about that marriage that we're looking for, and the balance that we're talking about. And I can see in everyone's responses, there was always that response that yes, we go with the AI, but that human factor still needs to be part of the process, whether it is making the decision at the end of the process, whether it's dictating what the process looks like, understanding and developing the process right from up front, and the human involvement right from up front. And I think that's one of the critical things that Busi's kind of brought to our attention, that it starts right from the start of the cycle and all the way through the cycle. So we're not just part of one part of the cycle, we part of the entire cycle. And I think now we've kind of exhausted the point of artificial intelligence in the recruitment process. Let's start talking about it a little bit later in the process. They in the system, but now we have to kind of build some skills for these individuals. So I want to start looking at reskilling and upskilling, and what kind of strategies you're using when we think about artificial intelligence, and how does that inform your reskilling and upskilling process of employees or your fellow colleagues in your environment. So yeah, let's throw the floor open for that question. Chantal. And then Nora.
Thanks, Nishan. So from our side, I think it was really important for us to leverage AI specifically in the development, reskilling and upskilling of our employees. So we use strategic workforce planning to identify critical skills into the future, and identify and plan for the strategies we need to, up to 5 years in advance. Also, I did mention that we're investing in technology around strategic workforce planning to help us with that process. But we've also implemented, specifically from a reskilling and upskilling perspective, a talent marketplace that's driven by AI leveraged skills. So employees basically go and capture an employee profile with all of their skills, their competencies, their interests, and the AI tool in the marketplace will then help to drive projects to them, where they can learn skills that they would be interested in. And that for me is such a powerful thing, because one of the things people often lack in the learning process is the ability to get that experience. And from a recruitment perspective, we often want the experience when we're recruiting individuals. So very powerful for us in that space is the ability to post projects that the AI will recommend to employees based on the skill sets that they want to develop. And also, learning programs based on, their interests and developments. I think a key foundational factor for us, though, in having that successfully done, and we're still in the process, is having our job architecture correct, right? And understanding which job roles require which skills, or which projects in our agile context will require what skills, so that the AI can learn from that and be accurate in how it also recommends those skills. Projects and eventually also vacancies downstream.
No, thank you for that, Chantal. So what I'm hearing from you is the job architecture needs to be right. And once you have the job architecture right, it kind of determines what skills you're looking for. And then the tools help in building those skills, but then also making those skills available for different opportunities in what you call the talent marketplace. So I'm assuming it's like some sort of an advertisement board where individuals can then tap into opportunities to build the experience behind the learning that they've just kind of gone through.
It's actually powered by AI. So there's an AI in the background that says, okay, Chantal is interested in learning more about data science. I'm going to send her data science learning training programs. Chantal wants to get experience in, I don't know, creating a specific data model or Power BI dashboard. And so it'll recommend that people have the opportunities throughout the business to go and post, projects. And maybe there is a project where someone wants to build a dashboard and I can put my hand up to go and get the experience because I've now done the knowledge components or whatever. And it's all powered by AI in the back end, driving these learning programs, driving these opportunities, and downstream the intention is also for it to push skills, not skills, sorry, positions, vacancies, for different roles across the organization to the employees. So I think we're dabbling in the power of AI and driving our reskilling and upskilling opportunities based on customized and personalized contents for employees according to their unique skills profiles, according to their unique interests and career growth, their career growth goals, in essence.
No, fantastic. Hyper-personalized learning, right? Exactly what you need when you need it. So I love that. Thank you, Chantal. Let's jump to Nora.
Thanks, Nishan. So we've done the work in terms of identifying internally the skills that we believe will be obsolete by 2030. And most of that are sitting in our ops space, highly administrative, and process driven. So the work that we're currently doing is together with our colleagues in IT, we're looking at automation. So that work is underway. And I guess to Chantal's point, workforce planning is driving that work quite a lot. So already we know in terms of, which are the roles that are going to be impacted, and we're doing the reskilling, because also we know the roles that are going to be required by 2030 and how much of those will be impacted by AI. But what we've also then done is that from a group perspective, our strategy is underpinned by data. We're saying that everything that we do will be driven and will rely heavily on data. So we started a program last year where throughout the organization, we've made a commitment that every single person that works for Santam, regardless of the role that you are in, it's important that we upskill you, in data analytics and just being comfortable around data and drawing insights out of that. And what we are doing is that we've rolled out a program, and it's almost like, where you've identified that customer service is a key skill and therefore everybody's going to do it. We've done the same with data. So we are training everyone, but we've also then included a data objective for every single individual. So obviously, depending on the role that you are in, it will look different in your performance contract. So we are moving the organization to say, we are an organization that is heavily driven and dependent on data in order for us to make sure that we are prepared for what the future of AI is going to look like. And it starts with training and starting with the even the language that we're using internally. And it's a journey that we started last year, still in its infancy, but I think it's, we're on the right track as well.
Thanks, Nora. So some of the things I'm taking out of that is it starts right at the top. It's part of your strategy. It's ingrained, but it's also about the languaging that you're using within the organization to encourage people into that direction, encourage people to get familiar and comfortable with data analytics, because that's where we're saying humans are playing the role, right? So the system will give you the data, but it still needs somebody to be able to, I wouldn't say manipulate, but to interpret that data and obviously further then communicate it. Thanks for that, Nora. Some real gems there. Sapati.
Great, thanks, Nishin. So for us, with the introduction of AI, it does not necessarily mean that a role is going to significantly change or a role is no longer going to be existing, right? So in some instances, for example, we've had to do what we call role impact assessments, really just to understand the level of impact that by introducing a particular AI tool or platform, is it impacting the role by 80% or so a significant percentage where the role might change, or is it only just a small percentage of someone's role that's going to be impacted? You then obviously want to make sure that you have what we call targeted learning, right? Depending on the level of impact that AI will bring to that role. So if it's a small role, then you might train, you might upskill, you might, introduce certain courses or various learning strategies for that. Obviously, if it's a significant chunk, a higher than 80% where now it's a new role, you might then be, upskilling that individual for a completely new role altogether, which might be completely different from this as well. But the point here really is just to make sure that, that whatever you understand that the impact that AI is going to be bringing to a particular role, and then have a targeted learning approach to that. Thanks,
fantastic, Sapati. I think you kind of talking to what we heard earlier. I think it was Ilse that mentioned the job architecture. So by having that kind of right, understanding the job architecture, understanding what the impact of the AI would be on that particular role, and then developing the training accordingly. So again, kind of getting to that hyper personalized kind of development platform or hyper personalized development opportunity. But it's got to be right from the architecture onwards for you to really know what the impact is going to be. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sapati. Sarisha, and then I think it was Nicola.
I think it was my colleague first. Nicola, do you want to go first? Okay. I think I'll be quick. Just 2 points I want to make. I mean, I know you mentioned, Nishan, the top-down approach, but I think we also need to consider the bottom-up approach. Our landscape is changing, and we need tertiary educators equally to come and support us in terms of the way the professional landscape is changing, because the skill set we need, the graduates that we need to come in, there's a different skill that we require. So, that's one aspect that I think we do need to think about. And secondly, I do also think, the learning and development opportunities, yes, most of our organizations are very learning centric, and that's part of our employee value proposition that we offer. But I think what's quite key is lifelong learning. It just doesn't start here in India. It's going to be continuously changing. So we need to make certain that we incorporate lifelong learning and create that culture of learning as well. But I think what's key, which we should equally consider, is the bottom-up approach in terms of graduates that are coming into our industries as well in the future.
No, fantastic. Thanks, Sarisha. So we're actually building a program on the generational divide and really understanding that, but also the concept called reverse mentoring and the ability to be able to have these graduates come in and teach us what the world should kind of look like, and actually using them as a development opportunity as well. But I think also very important in what you were saying is the lifelong learning aspect, which is everyone should have that culture of lifelong learning. And that's the one thing that's going to keep them relevant, right? That ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn, which is actually what we're talking about, skilling and reskilling, right? People need to be able to know and understand how to take what they've learned. Because it's of no relevance at the moment, let's put that to the side and start developing skills that are relevant and continue. But something interesting that I came across in the debate the other day was that sometimes when it comes to innovation, we always go back to things that we knew in the past. So when we say unlearn, it's not about unlearn and forget, but it's about unlearn at the moment and park it in the archives and be able to tap into that to help with innovative ideas in the future. So yeah, but again, I get to the point, lifelong learning critical for us to continue staying relevant. Nicola, let's open the floor to you.
Yeah, I'll connect both your points actually very quickly to summarize. But that reverse mentorship, we actually have incorporated in Investec, linking up and coming talent in the organization to senior people to think about everything from business strategy to new skill sets required, etc. And the challenge in the way that they bring through a diversity of thought to those individuals is just amazing. And we've had many of our execs say to individuals that are coming in young and bright-eyed and to I think it was Nora's point earlier, really they've grown up. They don't know what a shop is. It's all online shopping, and it's all virtual reality worlds in which they speak to their friends. But the mindset that they're bringing to the execs will ask for very, very practical skills, like take me through an AI tool, show me how it works, show me what's been done with it, So it really does work. But I just wanted to go back to the point that was made also around an EVP. What we are seeing, I'm not sure how long people have been in the industry, but we used to battle to recruit tech talent when you were asking them to run a bank versus they wanted to come in and build the bank or transform the bank. There was always that tussle between you needed tech skill to run it and other tech skill to transform it. It's very similar to what we see in terms of what people are wanting from organizations from a career perspective. The conversation used to sound like, what does the career path look like? What's the career path look like? Or what's the next move in terms of the next role? And what we're hearing a lot in different language sets is obviously around, what does the learning path look like? Because we can't be naive. Organizations are not going to create all individuals that are coming in and they're just going to be lifers for you. Not at all. People are coming to your organizations also to learn a skill. And can you articulate for them in terms of all of the brilliant strategies that people have been speaking through? What does it mean for them as an individual coming into your organization around capability, skill, exposure, etc.? And Chantal, the maturity of those talent marketplaces are just immense. And if we can articulate them correctly for people, it really does give them a sense around a learning lattice versus a career path.
Oh, lovely. I love that. So, and I think you hit it spot on there. As much as we think we want to develop individuals for a particular skill, in that EVP process, in that talent and recruitment process, candidates are asking us, what does that path actually look like? And that's what you're referring to. And how do we actually show that to the candidate in the recruitment process? Or how do we communicate it? Or how do we institutionalize it? That development is actually part of what you get when you come here, and you can help shape it. So it's not just only what the organization wants, but it's a marriage of what the organization wants and what you want to do and develop and where your future is. So thanks for that, Nicola, an absolute gem there. Chantal, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo what Nicola said, right? I mean, with the new younger tech talent coming through, what we're seeing is they don't even have CVs anymore. They've got portfolios of evidence with links to tools that they've created or developed, which is a very different approach. And hence them wanting to understand, okay, how can I build onto this and make this better in your organization? What opportunities am I going to have to gain experiences? Nasheen, I just also wanted to pick up on the point you made earlier around the learning agility, right? I think that's such a critical thing for our workforces and financial services. And yes, absolutely, it's about that ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. But I think it's also about the ability to learn from your experiences and apply them in new ways, specifically when it comes to a world of work where you've got digital transformation, where you've got AI, Gen AI, robotic process automation and other tools that's really helping you, shift work more towards a future space of work. And then I think, also just driving that ability to work with different levels of complexity, because it is becoming more complex with all of this. So how do we leverage these tools to help us in that regard also?
Oh, thanks for that, Chantal. So that was an interesting one, right? So the ability to learn, but the ability to learn and then start applying it or adapting it to different contexts. So kind of talking about innovation. So try to innovate. So learn, take what you have, apply it into the context, but then how can you adapt that learning? So actually humans being artificial intelligence in a sense, in a way. So yeah, interesting. I like that concept. Elsa, I see you've got your hand up as well. Let's open up to you.
Yeah, just had a thought sparked by what Nicola was talking about, and just kind of pivoting again to the candidate or the employee or the individual that we want to retain. I think to release some of the anxiety, because I know we might be moving in that direction, but people are getting very anxious about all of this that's happening in the market. And even for a data analyst, I will always say that one of the most important things to your career development, if you were to join the company, is the ability to build relationships, the networking element. Again, that very human-centric aspect of sitting down and having a coffee with someone in an area, someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Chantal that said, you know, we have these very sophisticated programs for career development, but at the end of the day, you know, there has to be a human also championing you. And I think what's really important for the market and a really big takeaway is, at the end of the day, the relationships you make throughout your career and within a specific organization or team is so, so crucial to your path. And organizations can do all these wonderful, amazing things and spend a lot of money to help advance employees. But at the end of the day, you hold that power if you can really foster and expand on your ability to network and to build solid relationships with individuals that you work with or that work in the areas that you'd like to expand in. And I think that's one of the most simple and basic things. And there's so many books and courses and talks on YouTube about how to go about doing this. I think that skill will remain essential as a future fit skill as long as I'm in the industry at least.
No, fantastic. And I think thanks for that. Again, bringing us to kind of reality. AI is part of the process, but part of development as well. When you talk about coaching and mentoring, I mean, at the moment, that's a human-driven capability. That's what helps us or helps individuals coming into the organization to fit into the organization, to make decisions, to lead, to navigate around challenges. And AI at the moment can't help us navigate around the challenges. So that human involvement is really, really critical. And then also that ability to be able to build networks, because that also helps you in your decision-making process, but it also helps you in your growth and your development. If you build up the right networks, that can help you navigate up the leadership ladder. So again, thank you for that, Elsa. The reality that humans will always play part of this process in some shape or form. Samir, I see your hand is up.
Thanks. I just wanted to touch on that point that Ilse made as well. So we've seen great success with sort of what we call the innovation model, which is when we bring in new recruits, there's this bi-directional mentorship with our leaders and our experienced industry leaders. And what you get there is you get lots and lots of wisdom from the seniors coming down to the mentees, and then the other way where you get them, the new generations, especially challenging the status quo. So they ask questions in different ways where, you know, as like someone with 20 years of experience and been there for a long time, you don't think that way. And we've had great success with that, where you have someone that's been working in a certain domain for a very long time. This is how things are done. This is how they do it. And all of a sudden you have this new thought process about why it's being done in that way and why it cannot adapt or change, etc. So we've seen great success in that part.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Amir. But I'd like to now transition. I think we've had quite a great sense in terms of now the development opportunities that sit behind individuals coming in and how AI can help us, but also without forgetting the fact in terms of the points Ilse has made and now Samir reiterating, the fact that humans will still always play a part of this here, because there's things that AI will always miss up until a certain point. So let's jump into artificial intelligence and the anxiety that it's causing in the environment. So as human resource practitioners, it's our role, our accountability to ease the anxiety in the environment. Apart from the fact that we know there is a reality that things are changing and it's changing rapidly, what are some of the things we can do, or are we experiencing this in our environment? How are we experiencing it? And what can we actually do to lessen the impact of AI anxiety in the environment? Whoa, the hands just went popping up there, right? So I think I saw Busi first, then Nora, then Samir.
I think, Lucian, in a country and perhaps a continent such as ours, where unemployment just so rife, I think the anxiety around job displacement as it relates to AI is a valid one, right? So we can't downplay the fact that people have a fear that they will lose their jobs or that they will get replaced by AI. And I think for me, as human capital practitioners, what is important is one, clear communication around what the AI strategy is and the fact that we're not replacing your job in most instances. I remember there was a world when you said there would be no tellers in banks. And for all of us that work for banks, we'll still have branches. There's still a teller in the bank. It's then just that clear communication and proactive change management around what the role of AI is going to be and how it's going to augment the human capacity in the workplace. I find that what also works is using and leveraging specific use cases, right, around the benefits of AI. So then how do you implement a proof of concept? Take the learnings from that proof of concept, refine it before you go big bang. Right, because I know we tend to go big bang and we haven't taken learnings and it falls, which then further accelerates the anxiety in the system. So some of the strategies I would recommend firstly is that transparency around how AI will enhance not perhaps your immediate job, but the workplace in its entirety, right? It's around empowering employees with reskilling opportunities. So if my job is becoming redundant or is changing as a result of artificial intelligence, how are you as my employer walking the journey with me to reskill me so that I am better capable to perform in a different capacity? And then also involving employees in our AI integration journeys. We spoke about the bottom-down approach earlier, but actually take them on the journey, create a sense of ownership and excitement amongst employees themselves. And that would then help with alleviating the anxiety and driving greater adoption.
Fantastic, Busi. Thank you so much for that. Let's jump to Nora.
Thanks, Nishan. I mean, I completely agree with Busi. But a quick example, for example, of, I mean, anxiety is so rife. But for me, I think how it just became practical was one day I walked into the office. I don't know if my colleagues have seen these robots that clean, you know, the vacuum cleaners. And I walked in and I didn't realize that, you know, two of our cleaning ladies were actually standing there watching this robot. But as I walk in, then I'm excited about it because it was the first time that I'm seeing it. And, you know, in my excitement, I was like, oh, this is so cool. And one of the ladies said to me, it is, but it means that now what is my job? And I think for me, it made it so clear in terms of where, because now you had these two ladies that used to be, you know, to do this mopping, and now you've got this robot that is doing it for them. And I think for me, it raised the question of what change management has happened, you know, and have we worked with them to then say, if now you've got this AI, you know, tool that is doing the work that you used to do, and there's two of you, you know, if we don't change manage, then at some point one of them, if not both, will be retrenched. So I think that for me is important. I agree with Busi that it's important that, you know, people also own it and they are taken along on the journey. And how we're doing that is that, you know, we're partnering with our staff to say, help us identify what part of your role will actually, you know, be more efficient if it was done or replaced by AI, so that it's not almost done to them, but we're saying, let's unpack your role, let's look at your role and say, you know, which part of it will make sense if it was replaced by AI? And if that happens, what reskilling do we then need to do in order to make sure that, you know, you still you know, you are still relevant? And I think it speaks to what we spoke about earlier, to say, let's look at AI as an enabler and an enhancer of the work that you're already doing. But it can't be top down. I think it needs to be top down, bottom up. We need to find ourselves somewhere. But most importantly, and lastly, Nishan, I think we need to acknowledge that the anxiety is there. Sometimes we are expecting people to get along with it, you know, and we're expecting people to say, no, but you know, your role won't be replaced. We'll upskill you, will redeploy you, but we're not change managing it, and we're not really taking people through the journey. So it's important that we acknowledge that the anxiety is there and the anxiety is real, and then to work with people to say, you know, let's co-create what this reskilling and what this, you know, new role is going to look like. Thanks, Nisha.
Thank you so much, Nora. Let's jump to Samir and then Sarisha, and then we'll start wrapping up the session. We've actually gone through nearly an hour and a half with this engaging conversation. So Samir, then Sarisha, or was it the other way around?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much. So I was going to say we're sort of in one of those cycles again, right? So it's not something that we haven't seen before. We saw it with automation a few years ago and technologies before that, just sort of affecting different jobs and roles. So as it sort of progresses through the cycle, there is this fear of what's going to happen with my job, etc. And I think it's a complex, but it's a very simple answer, especially the way we've seen it, right? It's communication. It's just open and transparent communication. That's what everybody needs. Is they need to understand where you're headed, why you're headed that way, how it affects them, and how they're going to go along that journey with you. So that, I think, is just the most critical of it all. It's just the right level of communication.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Samir. And let's round off this question with Sarisha before we round off the panel session for today.
Sure, thank you. So just quickly, I think from my perspective as well, I agree with my colleagues in terms of the change management process, but I also equally feel our leaders, I mean, it's been proven, right? Leaders with like a strong EQ, they're able to adapt AI into the organization. And we need those type of leaders during this change management process. And the other aspect I think that's quite critical is that there needs to be a mindset shift. Yes, there is a lot of anxiety, but we need to also focus on the opportunities it could potentially bring in terms of upskilling our employees, as well as in contributing to the unemployment rate. I think Bosi mentioned it as well, right? We can reduce that by looking and focusing on the opportunities. And then I think the last comment that I equally want to make as well, for us to have a culture of productive debate, psychological safety, and in terms of creating a harmonious work environment, we need both, right? And we need both the human element and we need the technology as well. But we can't operate in isolation. And it's just very important that our employees understand that huge opportunities available, and we need to start focusing on the positivity around that. And that will entail us having strong leaders with strong EQ to take us through this journey as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarisha. Chantal?
Sorry, just the last point. I echo everything my colleagues have said on the call. I think that transparency and communication is important, and to be able to get to that space, again, strategic workforce planning is really important. Identifying, what we do is try and identify those skills and capabilities that will be impacted by AI, the job roles associated with them, at least 3 to 5 years in advance, because that gives us a 3 to 5 year time period within which to look at what adjacent skills do these individuals have that we can build on to get them into a different career trajectory, or reskill and upskill them into different roles that they might be interested in. Just something I wanted to add.
No, awesome. Thank you, Chantal. So let's bring the session to a close. We've got like about 4 minutes to go. I think we've had some interesting commentary coming through. I'm going to give each one of you roughly about 30 seconds to wrap up your thinking, right? So where's the future going to? What does it look like, right? So what are the opportunities? What do you think are some of the challenges that you think would still come along the way? And you can use that to wrap up your thinking. And yeah, 30 seconds, go. Who would like to go first?
I'm happy. I think for me, in terms of the future, AI is not going to go away. It's here to stay. It's going to evolve. So best we embrace it. Best we build up that literacy, AI literacy in our organizations. Best we get our employees trained up on how to prompt AI to make their lives easier. You know, a sales consultant, how can they use AI prompts to draft a sales pitch to a customer, leveraging Copilot or Gen AI, or whatever your organization? I think then a key thing is the ethical use of AI and not losing sight of that in whatever we do across the organization from an HR and business perspective.
Thank you, Chantal. Ilse, I see you've jumped in next.
I think that we're living in a world where we have more information and data than we've ever had before. And the idea of what goes behind data-driven decision-making, we spoke about all the skills, the problem solving, the relationship building, the EQ, all of those aspects that are still really like human-centric. And I think then using that to make the most out of AI and to find the solutions for each organization or team that suits the needs of where they are at this exact point in time, and obviously considering what would be future fit skills so that we can develop and retain and do all the things that we need to do to ensure that we remain competitive as organizations.
Thank you, Elsa. Nora.
Thanks, Nishan. So I agree. I think the future is AI. We need to embrace it. But I think most importantly, let's not wait for it to happen to us. We need to get in front of it. We need to own it. And we need to direct it. Otherwise, we will be replaced by these robots. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Nora. Busi, Nicola, then Sapati.
Thanks, Nishan. I think for me, the future is not some distant concept. The future is here. And the challenge to us as human capital professionals is what is our rate, our scale, and our pace of change in response to that future?
No, lovely stuff. Thank you for running us off there, Busi. Nicola?
I'll just add to that to say the importance of human capital, if anyone ever doubted it, which they haven't, it becomes one of the most strategic functions in your business. Transactional HR is really gone, to be quite honest. It is only transformational that we should be focusing on strategically going forward. So yeah, just the importance of human capital in this change process and in the future generations is going to be key.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicola. And the next one I think we said was Sapati.
Yes, and I think I'm going to be echoing her colleagues' views as well. AI is here to stay. It's going to continue evolving, continue to make our lives even better. And I think our role is just to make sure that we ourselves as HR practitioners are comfortable with that change, and instilling that levels of comfort as well with the employees that we support. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sapati. All right, so I think that kind of wraps us up for the day. Okay, yeah. So that kind of wraps us up for the day. Thank you so much, colleagues. I think there were some absolute gems that popped out. If I just quickly highlight some of them, the pace to build the skills is rapidly increasing. We need to keep a pace with that. We're looking at robust strategic plans that need to be put in place to be able to enable us to get to building up those skills. We had quite a few stats being thrown out quite earlier on in terms of how quickly these skills are required because the demand for them are so high. We've heard things like we are competing for these skills, not just in the sector, but across all of the sectors. We've had a sense of the fact that we could go top down, bottom up, and both ways that we learn and we have to manage. It always works quite nicely when we go top down and we have the same language from leadership and it's applied in the strategy throughout the organization. We've heard that we need the balance between AI and humans, and that humans will always be part of the process, at least for the coming future, and that humans will actually drive the process. And we spoke a bit about the process and the fact that humans are actually part of the process from the beginning all the way through to the end of the process. Another absolute gem that we picked up throughout, right? AI generates the data, but again, it's humans that audit and make those decisions. I think that was another gem that was dropped somewhere along the line. And I think with all of these kind of thinking, the leadership ability that comes behind that is something we didn't really quite get into. How do leaders actually drive this down? And I'm hoping that would be an opportunity for discussion when I will invite you back onto another panel. But today's session was an absolute outstanding session. Some absolute gems, deep insights, and I really thank you for your time this afternoon. So thank you, dear panel, and thank you to the colleagues that have joined on to listen to the insights that you had to share.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nishan. Thank you, everybody.
So
Thanks, colleagues.
thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Signing off. Goodbye.